How the Internet Travels Across Oceans, Cables. A couple of days ago I was watching this lecture by Avi Flambaum titled, How the Web Works. And had to momentarily pause the video and freak out when he explained how the Internet travels across oceans. Simply put, there are hundreds of underwater cables that have been put at the bottom of the ocean to transmit data internationally. It's not magic. There is something so simple and yet so grand about this that I love. No, it's not satellites. Well, there are some satellites. Or magic, it's simply a bunch of physical cables we installed. Submarine cables. There are currently around 378 underwater cables, over 1.2 million kilometers of cable total, that connect most of the world to the Internet. Telegeography offers an interactive submarine cable map, which shows the overall map of cables and gives you info like that particular cable length, who owns it, and its landing points. I highly recommend checking it out. At their core, these cables use fiber optics to send light signals, with lasers that shoot from one end to another at an extreme rate. The actual glass fibers that do this are very small, they have a similar diameter to a piece of hair, but they are covered with several layers of protection. Still, the majority of the cable at the bottom of the ocean is only about the size of a garden hose. The layers of protection are increased in more shallow areas since there's a greater chance of coming into contact with ships, etc. They're also buried when close to shore for another layer of protection. However, out in the deep sea areas, the cables are laid directly on the ocean floor using a special machine. Where are the cables installed? Precautions are taken to find the safest path for the cables to avoid areas where there's a lot of fishing or where boats may be anchoring. It's these types of human activities that cause the most damage to the cables. Although there are about 100 cable faults each year, you would probably never notice because companies use redundant cables, so there's always backup. Also, the cables are laid based on which locations have something to communicate with each other. So, you can see there are not a lot of direct lines between Australia and South America, but instead, they both have many cables linking to North America. This is suggesting that they both have a need to send and receive info from North America. Fast facts. Here are some additional facts, in case you're as fascinated with these cables as I am. The first oceanic cables ever installed were telegraphic lines laid across the Atlantic Ocean in 1866. It only takes one boat to carry all the cable needed for these transcontinental connections. Every 50 miles under the ocean there are blocks called repeaters that help amplify the light so it can travel all the thousands of miles. In 2013, 3 scuba divers were caught trying to cut an undersea internet cable in the Mediterranean, which slowed down the internet for about a week. While sharks are known to occasionally bite the cables, they are not seen as a major threat to the internet. Human activity accounts for about 2/3 of damages to the cables. When did you learn that the world was connected via underwater cables? Am I the last to learn this? I'd love to hear any feedback or additional facts you have about our underwater system. Internet is the namesake of the ultimate necessity these days. It's so familiar that even a baby would not need its introduction. He will already be aware of it. The internet makes everything easy and within reach. The internet has a system that holds the web world together. Its vastness is functional due to petite bits of codes that discover their way into the world with the assistance of thin wires. These wires are so thin that they are comparable to a strand of hair on the dark ocean floor. The data ultimately locates its way from New York to Sydney, from Hong Kong to London, and hence, it lets you rediscover the world. The cables cover an extension of nearly 750,000 miles to the various continents in order to satisfy and support our never-ending demand to access entertainment and communication. Companies are always looking into modes and ways through which the best services would be provided. Keeping that in mind, the companies have typically pooled their resources to collaborate with the projects related to undersea cables. This would act as a free space of sharing. Google, however, has changed its strategies by following its own way, in a distinctive manner. It's an in-a-class-by-itself project that connects the United States to Chile, which is the home of the company's largest data center in Latin America. Data is not in the clouds. People think that the data is present in the clouds, but actually it's a myth. Jane Stowell, Senior Vice President of Business Development, who also oversees the constructions of Google's undersea cable projects, states, the data is present in the ocean. People think that data is in the cloud, but it's not. It's in the ocean. Dive into this article from NY Times to learn more about the undersea cable projects we launched this year, December 26, 2019. The process of getting there is an intensively exacting and time-consuming one. The procedure accelerates with a ship that has a height of 456 foot, ironically known as durable. The ship will eventually carry the cables to the sea. First, the cables are assembled inside a sprawling factory, located at a distance of about 100 yards in Newington, NH. How Internet cables are placed in the ocean. The cables are assembled together like the cluster of strands of tiny threads of glass fibers, followed by the lasers that propel data down the threads with the speed of light, using the fiber optic technology. After reaching the land and connecting with an existing network, the data makes its way to a person's device through a web page or as an email. These days most of us largely experience the accessibility of the internet through Wi-Fi and phone data plans. Those systems eventually link up with physical cables that are capable of carrying the information across the continent with smart swiftness. Manufacturing of the undersea internet cables. In the manufacturing process, the cables move through high-speed mills that matches the size of jet engines. Next, they wrap the wire in a copper casing that carries the electricity across the lines, simply to keep the data moving. Depending on the location of the cables, plastic, steel, and tar are added to assist in withstanding the unpredictable ocean environment. Eventually, when the work is finished, the cables will be found with the size of a thick garden hose. A whole year is spent in planning about the charting or mapping of a cable route. This is necessary to avoid underwater hazards. However, the cables still have to withstand the heavy currents, rock slides, interference from fishing trawlers, and the most dangerous of all is the earthquake. The life expectancy of each cable is 25 years. A conveyor, that the staff members declare the cable highway, moves the cable directly into durable, docked in Piscataquis River. The ship will carry over 4,000 miles of cable pick. World of Engineering, July 5, 2019. The making of the first transatlantic cable, which connected the United States and Britain, was accomplished in the year 1858. The commemoration was processed by the Imperial Queen of England. President Buchanan of America received the message from Queen Victoria, and the transmission of the message took 16 hours. There are many wireless and satellite technologies in competition, but there is no match for cable, which remains to be the most rapid, industrious, and above all the least expensive methods of sending information globally. That by no means suggests that it's cheap, as Google would never disclose the cost of its projected to Chile. But according to the experts, subsea projects cost up to $350 million, depending on the length of the cable. In contemporary time, the telecommunication companies had boasted the most about laying down the foundation of cable. But with the sweep of time, American tech giants have turned careful and controlling. Google has backed 14 cables globally. Amazon, Facebook, and Microsoft have invested in data centers connecting in North America, South America, Asia, Europe, and Africa, according to a research firm called Telegeography. Internet is the namesake of the ultimate necessity these days. It's so familiar that even a baby would not need its introduction. He will already be aware of it. The internet makes everything easy and within reach. The internet has a system that holds the web world together. Like, comment, share, and subscribe to my channel.